One of the things that I really identified with Bob is that he has all his life resisted being put in a box.
Play it loud!
Jim has that kind of authority. He's a strong presence.
Okay, good, cut.
He feels like a captain of a ship. You know you're in great hands. His confidence and his assuredness is so persuasive.
Opera singer, back to you.
Jim was the perfect guy to direct this in that he knew how to make it at an elevated level. You don't see a lot of imagery of Bob like that at the time.
You don't have to be so tight.
Working with Jim makes it like, this is why I got into this. This is why I love movies, because of his love for movies.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Dylan.
I was young when I left home, and I've been out rambling around, and never wrote a letter to my home.
Bob read my last drafts on the script and just went through them with me page by page. I wanted him to understand that I didn't have some kind of message I want the movie to deliver. I'm interested in a movie that offers the audience all sides of a situation and you find your way.
So this is what?
I don't know.
Jim made me feel that addressing people and music and a time that's incredibly historic, almost mythical, there was a reason to do it.
If invasion is undertaken...
There's a civil war going on right now. Bombs hanging over us. It's not all about the Dust Bowl and Johnny Appleseed anymore.
The time period is fascinating for a variety of reasons. It was a moment of openness in America. From the birth of modern jazz to modern comedy with Lenny Bruce to modern folk music.
The West Village was responsible for Bob Dylan as much as Bob Dylan was responsible for the West Village. It was a small geographical area filled with poets and painters and folk singers, all on top of each other, feeding off of each other, going to the cafes that were every 50 feet and the bars and the galleries. It was kind of daunting and scary to have to recreate.
Where can I find a city block that looks like McDougal Street? So much of Manhattan, the whole city has been kind of rebuilt. You really can't find the Village or the Lower East Side.
It turns out that this side of the river, particularly Hoboken, New Jersey, looks more like New York did than New York does now. There's a lot of texture and layering and beauty to the New Jersey side. Well, we're standing in the middle of McDougal Street, as it would have appeared in 1961. Our first anchor that we found was the Kettle of Fish Bar, which is a very important location for us. We were able to kind of expand from that and then add Cafe Wa on the corner here, across from Cafe Reggio, the Minetta Tavern, and then to try to kind of create a highlight reel of the best parts of McDougal Street in a plausible way.
The way that production design interacts with costumes, interacts with music, interacts with photography has a kind of a magical power to it.
This is me.
I have these custom-made lenses that are a hybrid of very old B-series anamorphic lenses. It just has the feel and the texture of a 70s or 60s movie, you know. It allows you to have a greater depth of field and also being able to go on the streets at night and really take advantage of what New York was like in the 60s.
For me and Faden, we loved how Bob looked with backlight, meaning we loved when his hair came alive like it did on the Greatest Hits album cover. So you're always conscious of these really simple things that in a way help Timmy become the guy.
If you went down, you found a phone, you thought they were wrong. Can you?
We're in Bob Dylan's apartment, where he lived from 1961 to 1964. This is one of our love letters to Bob Dylan's legacy. We poured thousands of hours into this space to get every single detail as authentic as possible.
When you see photographs of his apartment, he had a Chianti bottle like hanging on the shelves, and he had tons of books, poetry books. He had a Chinese painting, a cup full of feathers. They just look like things that he might have found at a rummage sale or like on the street or he found in the garbage. The desk he was sitting at, we made it ourselves with the legs and just a plywood top. The oval marble coffee table that he had, he made that. So we found the exact marble and drilled legs into it ourselves.
Every single object in this room has been thought about, down to the mattress, which is a cheap mattress and spongy and worn. All of the objects on the shelves have been sourced to match the research that we found.
Francois was like the all-star of this movie. If you look at Francois' production design at Bob's apartment, you look at image references at the time, I mean, they got the coffee stains right.
Hey!
How can we make these settings make the audience feel something? And that's by, like, is it cold or hot or sweaty or greasy or sooty or dirty? All that layering helped it be a very visceral sort of look for the film.
Newport never seen threads like these, man.
I have always been quite a fan of Bob Dylan, and the music is in my DNA.
Ari has an unparalleled eye, an incredible sense of the history of clothes and style.
It's a universal story. It's a young person coming to the big city to find themselves, to create their identity as an artist.
In Timmy's case, there's like 3 really identifiable looks. The kid who arrives in New York, and then the young Bob, kind of once he's got a recording deal, and then the post-64, 65 Bob with the hair and the Ray-Bans.
He was really influenced by Woody Guthrie's sensibility and the way he dressed. He dressed like a working man, like plaid shirts and Pendletons and like a carpenter-style jean. You see Bob Dylan's silhouette change from the early 60s, where he's wearing kind of baggy, shapeless clothes, to the end of our story in the mid-60s, where he's really becoming the Bob Dylan we know today, the icon.
You're Judas! I don't believe you.
He was kind of creating his own style that would last almost 60 years later today to be this kind of rock and roll archetype. The black pea coats, the striped trousers. This is probably one of the largest films that I've ever worked on. We have 4,500 background actors, 4,500 plus costumes. I have 8 tailors that have been working full-time the whole way through the movie. I think we've cleaned out every costume house in this country, so it's been thrilling for me.
Yeah, I'll take that shirt off and you're a goddamn clown. It ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe.
Even you don't know by now.
As a filmmaker, music is a really powerful tool, not only on screen or interacting with images, but even speaking as a writer, it's a real inspiring tool to kind of find a tone.
There's a blanket license for all of Bob's songs for the film, so we're allowed to use any of his material, which is incredible. It's super liberating.
Once upon a time, you're just so fine.
Just sitting down with Jim and picking the songs for the film, figuring out what the repertoire is going to be.
You want to do right by them. You want to do right by this music that changed my life growing up. It changed the life of all of my musical heroes, and it's really important to get it right.
One more, just like that. Here we go.
You used to laugh about.
We prepared 58 pre-records for this film. Day one we got here, Timmy sang live. Really never went back to the pre-records. It was all live all the time.
And what do you do now, my blue-eyed son?
Singing sometimes for 14 hours straight.
Oh, what do you do now, my darling young one?
But I've never seen Timmy get tired, which is astounding.
I'm going back out for the rain starts a-falling.
I tried to, as much as possible, down to every little detail, to emulate as close as we could to those original recordings. There's a good amount of pictures from the Highway 61 sessions. So you can look at the room and you can see what were the drum mics, what were the mics on the amps, what were the amps, what keyboards were there, what's the vocal mic, what's the acoustic guitar mic, you know, what gear was in the studio at the time, what compressors, what preamps. We brought in as much of that as we possibly could.
Every venue that we shoot in, we use a different vintage microphone so that we can create a real tapestry of sounds, and every microphone sounds very different.
Here we are, just in the beautiful 77.
Particularly those period microphones. They have a very specific sound to them.
Can we start again? You keep turning from the mic.
Really diving into Dylan's work from this period, we sort of discovered early on, oh, Bob's voice sounded very different from record to record to record, which is extra challenging for an actor. And so, Timmy and Nick worked in the studio with Jim to find the voice for each specific year.
Let's just do it before this whole thing crashes into the ground.
But I think what would be fun about these scenes too is all the different perspectives we can create. So it won't just be, this is what it sounded like when it was mixed and finished. What did it sound like in the control room as they were still figuring out levels, and what was it like standing in the room with the guys as they were recording?
Who wrote this? He did.
I stepped in the middle of 7 sad forests.
As a storyteller, it's my job to create a world in which you fall into it and you forget your own and you start living in theirs.
I feel like we captured the spirit of the music, the spirit of that time, the spirit of a guy who wouldn't let himself be boxed in.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. Joblo remains an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.